Is this music that you're playing in the browser, or is this on the thing?
This is through Spotify.
Oh, okay.
It's just podcast background music, basically. And we're live, Kevin.
We're live.
Yes, sir.
Cool. Okay. Hey, speaking of background noise, is there like a helium voice on this thing?
A helium?
Yeah, I know there's like a robot and some other.
Yeah, I mean, there's this, if you want to do that.
Put us on helium for a second. I just want to hear what it sounds like.
What about now?
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
You're not helium, though.
Yeah,
It's
you
just me.
Well, we all need to be on helium today. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
No.
Sorry. I don't know how to specify.
Yeah, well, we'll figure that out another time. I just
Try it
wanted
now. Well,
That's not
Yeah.
working either.
got it for you.
Yeah.
Need to lay off the machine there,
Right.
Yeah, it's all right.
Okay.
Well, how's everybody's week been going?
Good, man.
Good.
Thankful for the rain. It's been 2 weeks here in Jackson metro area since we've had some rain. So that's nice.
Yeah, I
Has
feel
it
like
only been that long? Seems like it's been longer.
No, I think we had that bad storm 2 weeks ago this past Saturday. So
Yeah, I don't count that though. It didn't
I'm going to
rain
get
very
my,
much.
my DoorDash.
yeah we yeah Ryan's waiting on a delivery here. DoorDash is nice from time to time when especially if you're really busy. Yeah, good way to. It's nice to have around. I definitely try to use it very sparingly, but it's nice that it's there when you need it.
That's right.
I hear something else in the
I do
background.
too. It's an advertisement.
Is it a pop up on the computer?
And I figure it's probably part of that Spotify stuff.
Oh, okay. So
How sweet would it be if Chick-fil-A sponsored?
Oh yeah, that would be awesome. Maybe we can get there someday.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'd probably have to have thousands of followers to get there, but
Lord, we ask in Jesus' name, please.
yeah, if we keep going, maybe. I mean, they're known for supporting Christian causes, so I feel like that's us, or we fit the bill. Yeah.
What's on the agenda today, Kevin?
Well, I figured today we'd talk some about fixed income securities. Do either of you guys have any experience with these? These are like bonds and CDs and that sort of thing.
Negative.
I don't personally, but I know that my grandma does for us. Her kids, grandkids.
Do you know which one it is that she set up? Was it bonds, CDs, or like a life?
Honestly, I don't know. I think it's all the above. I don't know though. Really.
Yeah, could be. And I mean, I guess that would be a good thing if it is all the above. I guess what I would say about fixed income securities is that they are typically viewed as being lower risk, a lower risk profile, which means that most people are going to view them as being a little bit safer. But part of what I want to do today is explain why I don't think that's always the case necessarily. And I'm not going to say you should never invest in these things. I tend to overlook them because the yields are lower, lower risk, lower reward. But in times of turmoil, when you feel like you can't rely on anything else, I mean, they might be a decent option. But the only problem with some of these devices is if interest rates um, or really it just comes down to the lower yield. They just don't, or I guess what I'm trying to say is sometimes they struggle to even outpace inflation. So if you have a year with bad inflation of, I don't know, let's say 7% plus, and you've got stuff like bonds and CDs, and none of them are paying more than 6 or 7% max, then you're either just sort of staying in line with inflation or you're losing money. So, um, and it's hard to, unfortunately, it's kind of tough to tell when you're in the middle of an inflationary environment exactly how bad it is. You typically don't find out what the actual inflation rate is for a year until the year's finished. Sort of like we tend to not know how well a president has performed until his terms has ended. So
Yeah. Kevin, is it true that with CDs specifically, that your money is locked until the terms end, and if you need to draw it out, is there any kind of penalties, or if it's locked in, you can't mess with it? Can you explain that part?
yeah, I do know that it tends to get locked up, but as far as specific penalties, I don't know. I'll see if I can pull up like an average.
And like, what does a term look like?
What is an average penalty for early CD withdrawal? Let's see if Google will give us something here.
Is there such thing like, and I don't wish this on my grandmother, but when she passes, that it unlocks the CD, or is there still terms on it?
I would imagine I don't know this for a fact, but I would imagine that the terms still apply. But the good news is once the terms are up, I'm sure you can access it. But I feel like even in the event of death, those terms are probably still gonna apply until they've been met. But I'll have to check on that. I'm not 100% sure.
I got you.
It's just knowing how the banks operate. I know that this is gonna sound cold, but I'm pretty sure to the bank it don't matter if a death event happened to somebody.
I mean, truth be told, I don't honestly know how those CD works. Is it like an investment or what?
Well, it stands for certificate of deposit. So
Right.
typically I think it's just a savings account type device where,
So the interest is higher for those?
The client determines a certain amount, right? Or unless they have a minimum, and then you buy into it, and then it's basically money just sitting there, and then you earn interest off of that, right?
yeah, the CDs, if I'm not mistaken, are one of the main ways that banks make money because I think on one of the previous episodes I was talking about how, let's say they offer you 4% on a CD. Well, they're going to turn around and lend that out to somebody else for, double or triple or whatever the interest. So a big part of how the bank makes money is they hope that you open a savings account or a CD or something like that, or even just a regular checking account. And then they use some of that money to reinvest and make a higher margin on. I want to say another week too, we talked about, what was it? Dang, I'm losing my train of thought here. Maybe I'm gonna move on. Maybe it'll come to me later. I don't know. I'm losing my train of thought. What were the questions you were asking me? Or what other questions?
I don't know. I feel like I asked a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I thought you were Googling something.
The penalty,
But right here
withdrawal penalty.
on the penalty that you brought up, it said that generally the penalties that are incurred are strictly a percentage of the interest that you earned.
Yeah. It says
So you initially buy into this CD or whoever is holding it, and then the money that has been bought in just grows with interest.
Like, isn't this similar to, back in my day, savings bonds were big. Is this pretty much like a savings bond?
From my understanding, yes. And like I said, I really don't. I haven't used these myself because the yields are. The main reason I haven't messed with these much is just because I feel like the interest doesn't outweigh the risk of the depreciation of your dollar due to inflation. So I typically don't mess with these because the rates that they pay to me typically don't hardly even outpace inflation. But under the right circumstances, they may be useful from time to time. But
Yeah, I was about to say it probably determines on how much you put in, right, or how much you buy in,
I mean,
how
obviously
much
you're
you get
gonna.
back.
Yeah, I was gonna say obviously if you use a higher amount, you're gonna make more. But from a percentage standpoint, you're typically not gonna make much more because let's say if they offer you 4%, it doesn't matter if you put in $10,000 or $10 million. 4% is what you're gonna get. And although
Yeah, but on that 10 million, you're gonna get a lot more back.
yeah, that's true. But what I want people to understand though is if the rate of inflation if the rate of inflation is 5% or higher, you're still technically losing money.
Gotcha.
Because,
Okay.
My
Yeah.
search here says that CDs typically have compounding interest that is paid at maturity of the CD, while bonds usually pay interest in regular increments throughout the term length.
Yeah, that
And
sounds.
it also says that when interest rates are lower, savings bonds are better. And when interest rates are high, CDs are better.
Yeah, I think that's true. From my understanding, the CD is mainly a bank product, and I think they do tend to yield more when interest rates are higher. And this interest rates and the Federal Reserve are always closely watched by equity investors, folks like me, public equity investors, because the higher interest rates are, it's good for savers, but it's typically bad for a business. Because the cost for them to borrow capital is going to increase. So yeah, it looks like if you were to do a $10,000 CD for 6 months right now, average APY, which is annual percentage rate or per year, looks like 6 months right now, average about 4.65, which means on $10,000 your interest earnings would be $229, which, like I said, it doesn't sound bad, but oh, that's for 5 years. Oh no, that's yeah. I mean it
That's
definitely.
horrible.
Yeah, after 5 years, it becomes $2,313. But yeah, I'm still not blown away by that because I've in the market. If you invest even $50,000 to $100,000, you can potentially, if you're in good stuff, make $1,000 a day. I mean, so
Yeah, but this is, and I think it has its place. This is, unless our nation collapses, this is an extremely safe bet here.
yeah, no, it's the way to go if you want to take the low risk, low reward way. But like I said, due to the dollar continually depreciating in value over time, it's just not, to each his own, but to me, it's just not very appealing. I feel like typically you're going to end up losing money on these. But like I said, everything has its, hey, my mic went out. Ryan,
I still got you.
you still got me?
Yeah.
What happened there? I lost my.
I was just trying to turn the mic down. We didn't. use, and I accidentally turned yours down.
Oh, it must have been my headphones because I just couldn't
Yeah,
hear
it
anything.
was. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But yeah, I mean these can have, they can have their moments. I just want to make sure that people know that, I wouldn't continually rely on these, and I'd try to keep a better view on. I don't know. Try to keep a better handle on what inflation's doing from year to year, or if you really want to be, I guess, anal about it, you can you could look it up every day, but most people aren't going to do that. But anyway, yeah, CDs are more of a bank product, and my understanding is bonds are typically devices that are issued by companies to raise additional money. And so bonds also tend to be viewed as a safer bet than public equity because they typically come with more safeguards and actions that you can take in the event that something bad happens to the company. So it's like I said before, everything's just sort of risk versus reward. The more risk you take, the more you're going to potentially earn if things go right. But like Chris said, since this is considered a safer device and less risky than, somebody with like $10 million or even $1 to $5 million, they might find these types of products to be more useful. But yeah, you're just not going to get the same level of growth.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. And then let's see, you've got bonds and CDs, and then you also have things called treasury notes and treasury bills. And I think let me look up the difference between the two. I think one is,
And while you're looking up, Kevin, just explain, if you can, what is the difference? Depending on the rate of interest, unless it just fluctuates, and maybe that is the difference. What is the difference in, a CD, savings bond, whatever, and putting your money just in a savings account? I mean, what is the advantage of any of those?
let me try to do some more Googling difference between CD and a savings account. I want to say they may actually be the same thing. Yeah, it says is a savings account where you agree to keep your money for a set period, earning a fixed interest rate. Savings accounts, on the other hand, offer more flexibility with variable interest rates and easier access to your money. So it sounds like CDs are just a type of savings account.
Got you.
So
where you're guaranteed a set interest rate.
Yeah, and I guess if you were to do a different regular savings account, it would be a floating rate, is what it sounds like to me, variable interest rate. So
right, I believe I'm right on this, but a savings account, your interest rate basically fluctuates every day, whatever the going interest rate is, right?
Yeah, that sounds right to me. I'm sure that's how it works. And as I was saying a minute ago, I personally haven't utilized these much, but I know that my parents like to use these. And like I've said, they have their place, especially if you're trying to be more risk averse. Although, for those of you in the audience, or not the audience, but for those of you listening, what I'm trying to sort of pound into your head is that life is not risk free, and if you try to do nothing but take a risk free approach, you're actually putting yourself in more danger than you are if you take risk. Because another sign of the times, this morning I want to say gold passed $3,500 an ounce. Let's check out the price of gold real quick. Right now it's $3,401.20 for 1 ounce of gold. And 1 ounce, if you don't know, is a pretty tiny amount.
Yeah, it's went up since Wednesday.
So that means
Does that gold fluctuate every day?
Yes.
yeah,
Gotcha.
all day, every day. It fluctuates. It's live all the time. Yeah, I guess somehow they I guess look at the purchases and the sales of the metal, and something updates it live according to supply and demand, and that's how you get the prices. Is if there's more buyers than sellers, the price goes up. High demand, limited supply, that's typically what makes prices increase. And right now, like I think either the other day or the day before, Trump made some comments about Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell and trying to get him out, and that seems to have freaked out investors again. And they're just, for some reason, all investors are stuck on tariffs and any comment that Trump makes right now. So I hope we get back away from that. But
Which is really kind of hard for me to understand that they would be so apprehensive. Anything Trump does, especially while he's president, just turns to gold.
yeah, I mean, I feel like things went. I mean, nobody's perfect, but I think people underappreciate what it is that he's trying to do. There may be times where he could go about it better, but I don't think people understand that if we continue the globalization stuff that we've been doing and we don't make some sort of change, then if you cut a bad deal, you don't want to stay in that bad deal for forever. And that's sort of what we're dealing with right now. Is at least my understanding is, like Trump has said before, we typically pay more when it comes to dealing with exports and imports than other countries do. And, we're just trying to level that out, except in the case of China. I mean, there's no denying we're just in an all-out trade war with them now.
And look, it honestly depends on who's in office. I mean, we can bring up clips of Hillary Clinton back when she was in office, talking about how we were about to implement some tariffs and how good they were. So it really depends on who's in office about who's supporting tariffs win.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if, for some reason, and that's one thing I don't like about our political system in this country, is everything is so closely tied to popularity. If you are a popular president that everybody likes, you can do no wrong. But if you're an unpopular president and say the truth and do hard things, then, you get attacked nonstop. And the other problem is, too, we typically don't know what their scorecard is until well after their term. So you can't, I want to say Trump hasn't even made it to his first 100 days yet. So you really can't blame anything on him yet. Most of the effects of,
I think we just passed or just got there.
yeah, but my point with that was just that, it's not enough time to have drastic effects yet. The only effects that we're seeing, and the reason that the market's dropping, is simply because investors are in a state of panic right now. So
Sure, anytime, and I feel like anytime that there is talk of change of the leadership, regardless of whether it's good or bad, that there will be some kind of volatility there.
yeah. Anytime somebody hears some news, and it doesn't even always have to be bad news per se. It can be news that involves somebody being confrontational, and investors will freak out and sell. So I mean, it's there are some clips to bring up Warren Buffett again. There's some clips where Warren Buffett talks about this imaginary figure called Mr. Market. And when he talks about Mr. Market, he's obviously talking about the stock market. And I think one time he said something like, Mr. Market is a raging alcoholic that makes bad decisions.
That's right.
And
That's right.
what he was talking about was, days like, I don't know, yesterday where investors freak out and just start selling. The market in the short term is illogical, I guess is the best way to put it. So,
and don't you think, Kevin, also that, and I could be wrong about this as well. However, I do think that some investors try to add to this. If you start selling and the prices start dropping, it could be advantageous for you. So, don't you think sometimes some investors take advantage that way?
Yeah, I mean that's part of the point that Buffett was making with that analogy is by saying that like don't and this sounds kind of bad, but I mean it's true when it comes to the market. I'm not saying do this to actual people, but he was basically saying like treat the market like it is, which is a raging alcoholic that makes bad decisions. And he was basically saying that when it's down, take advantage and buy, and then when just like things can get irrationally low or prices can drop, things can get irrationally high and overvalued. And so preferably you would want to sell, when the market's high and buy when it's low. I mean, everybody's heard the saying buy low and sell high. Well, it's true, but most people say that and just don't follow it. People tend to ride the wave. Like if they see prices are falling, they panic and they sell what they have, and that's how you lose money. It takes time and experience to get out of that behavior, basically. Because when I first started investing, I was sort of the same way. I'd be pulling up CNBC all the time, trying to figure out what the market's doing day by day, but day by day really doesn't matter nearly as much as people think it does. You need to have at least a 10-year horizon, in my opinion, if you're going to be messing with stocks.
Or if you're a trader and have a lot of clients.
Yeah, but I mean, I still would advocate against, there are people that claim that they make money day trading, but I did that for a while, and now after 30,000 hours, unless I was going to do like covered calls, and I'll explain those more in depth another time. To me, short term and day trading, you're almost always going to lose money unless you're dealing with covered calls. And like I said, we'll talk about those another time. But yeah, the long term mindset is the only way, in my opinion, that you're going to have a reliable return in the stock market. So with that being said, even though, like I said, stocks are riskier than bonds and CDs and that sort of thing, at the end of the day, if you look up the history or the performance history, stocks and real estate vastly outperform fixed income securities. I don't have a chart up right now, but I've seen some experts talk about this, and they showed some graphs where it showed how much more of a percentage over, let's say, 50 years, stocks and real estate have outperformed fixed income type securities. So, you know, they have their place if you want to be very risk averse, but ultimately there is no such thing as risk free. Even if you feel like the risk is lower, there's always, the bank could collapse, the US government itself could collapse. I know people don't want to think about that, but governments collapse. And ours, like I've said before, wants to just keep borrowing and borrowing and not paying off any debt. So if they continue on that track, they're going to see what the cost of that is eventually. And that's, people blame Trump for why gold is going so high and why investors are panicking. But, gold's been going up for years now. And I feel like a big part of the reason is because of,
Well, people that are selling gold aren't crying.
yeah, no, they're in good shape for sure. But right now, most people are buying because they're in a state of panic. But yeah, those that already had gold and are selling are making out like a bandit right now for sure.
Amen.
And that just goes to show you, like what I was talking about with stocks, about buying low and selling high. It's not that you want to, trying to time the market at exactly the right time is almost always going to get you burned. So, there's no alarm that sounds when the market has hit its bottom or when it's hit its top. So you just have to sort of buy little by little, when a correction happens, or that's the goal anyway. And then has anybody heard of I don't think we've talked about this before. Has anybody heard of something called a cost segregation study?
No.
Is that what Trump did early on in his business?
He may have, and for those of you listening that just see the word segregation, no, I'm not talking about the separation of races. That's not what we're talking about here. A cost segregation study in real estate. My understanding, I haven't done one yet, but I plan on doing one whenever I get into another property. My understanding is you pay somebody to basically come in, look at the property, and they break out what the cost of the depreciation is going to be on the structure and basically everything in the structure. And the reason why this is useful for real estate investors is because my understanding is that cost segregation study allows you to take all of that depreciation up front, as opposed to typically most people can only take, I don't know if it's $2,000 or $3,000 a year, whereas something like a cost segregation study allows you to take it all up front. So let's say you had a study done and the person said, all right, well, over 27 years or 30 years or whatever it is, the depreciation is going to amount to $200,000. Well, it allows you to take if I'm understanding this correctly, it allows you to take all of that depreciation potentially in the year that you had the segregation done. So it just speeds up you being able to collect that depreciation instead of having to wait 27 years. So it's just one of those, tax strategies that real estate investors tend to have done well with in the past years. Although I'll have to look, since Trump's president. I was gonna say I know, I want to say at one point it was gonna phase out, but now that Trump's back in office, it may not phase out. Let me see if I can find out.
Yeah, I think he did that early on in his business to, acquire those. Sorry, to acquire those buildings or to build those buildings in New York there. I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, almost certainly, since he's dealing with hotels and some really expensive real estate, he would have.
Golf courses, stuff like that.
Yeah, he would have almost certainly had to have used this. Otherwise, it would be, even for a wealthy person, that would be a monumental task to build out a hotel or something without this device.
Hmm.
This rate, let's see, it says this rate dropped to 80% in 2023 and will phase out entirely by 2027. Hopefully that will no longer be the case, but I guess that is the case as of right now. So there you have it. If you like the sound of this thing, be using it prior to 2027. And I hope this comes back. I hope it doesn't go away, but as of right now, it looks like it will by 2027. Ooh, excuse me.
You all right?
Yeah, I'm good.
Good.
A little stopped up. Let's see. Yeah. Now, I mean, land ownership is another investment option besides just buying properties, but in my opinion, land ownership is, I mean, it's good. There's not as many tax benefits when it comes to depreciation and that sort of thing, because it's, land doesn't depreciate, but obviously owning land tends to be a pretty good investment over time. A lot of people, as opposed to owning properties, if they own land and they want to utilize it for investment purposes, they might develop some lots for some type of property and then just charge a lot rent. And then,
I think that's the way McDonald's did it, right? I think they bought up a bunch of property and then they, people would franchise on it, and that basically, the building would be theirs, but they would have to pay the land rent or lease or something like that.
Yeah, there's a documentary on Netflix.
Foundation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched it. That's why I know. That's why I know what I know.
That's how you learned. I got you.
I learned.
Yeah, I forget what that guy's name is, but
Ray Kroc.
Ray Kroc. Yeah, I think that is what he did. Was he just started buying what he deemed to be valuable land that would.
Yeah, he got nasty.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean my understanding, and this is just from watching that documentary, so I haven't done a deep dive into this, but my understanding is that he basically messed over the original owners of the company and sort of took it over without them even fully realizing what was happening.
Yeah, and they decided that they didn't like some things that were going on. They decided that they were going to get out of it. And he said, okay, then you'll have to move your store because it's on my property.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once you spend all that money on a place, it would be a monumental task, to coin a phrase you used a second ago, to put that thing somewhere else.
Yeah. One thing that just sort of baffles me today is that so many people, and I'm not, don't get offended. Like if any of you fit this description, don't get offended, because I don't think it's entirely your fault that you get fooled by this. I think it's kind of crazy that businesses consider themselves a business if they don't own the property in which they operate. And I know that probably describes a lot of businesses, but if you don't own the property, theoretically, and I mean, I know that most of especially on commercial buildings, they do, what do they call them? These contracts, these triple net lease. Sometimes they might have a triple net lease in place that allows somebody to occupy the property at a certain rate for 15 or 20 years. And that might be reasonable, but landowners and landlords tend to have a lot of pricing power. So unless they do give you some really long lease, I mean, at any time that rent could get drastically higher and undercut your bottom line of your business. So not everybody can. I understand that property is expensive and not everybody can own one, but I just want people to know that back in the day, people would have thought you were crazy for not owning the property and just having a business in the property. But like there are these instruments that trade on the stock market today called real estate investment trusts. And that's sort of what they do is they act like Ray Kroc. and they tend to be pretty good investments. They buy up the properties and the land and, find a business to operate the property, and they take their cut and the business takes whatever cut they can get from sales. But almost always the landowners and the real estate owners tend to come out ahead. Because like I said, they have the power to raise rents over time. So,
and once you invest all that money in a property, it's really hard to start over.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of a no going back type of thing. And that's really how real estate investment works in general. Is it's really challenging to start doing anything else once you've started doing real estate investing, because between depreciation and what you have to do for taxes and then calls that you might get about issues with the property, I don't know too many people that are serious real estate investors that do many other things. We always view it as a passive income opportunity, but it tends to not be nearly as passive as what you would think. But I mean, nothing's ever going to be completely passive, so that doesn't really bother me. If you can get to where you're investing in things that at least are 60 to 80% passive, I feel like you're doing pretty well. The goal is just to find good things that are going to perform for you that don't take all of your time. If they take some of your time, then that's fine, and that's to be expected. But when it comes to trying to find residual income, passive income, part of that is just, you want to find things that ideally don't cause you to have to sink all of your time in. Anybody got any other perspectives on property or land ownership?
Buy land.
Yeah. I mean, and like my grandpa would say, they ain't making more of it. So
Yeah.
That's right.
Which, I mean, don't get me wrong, maybe over thousands of years, if we want to get nerdy about it, maybe more land is made, but I think Papa is mostly right. So,
Well, and definitely make sure that you know what you're doing before you go into it. And because you can, not all land is the same. I've heard nightmare stories about people who bought a piece of land that was cheap and didn't realize it was below the floodplain, that kind of thing. And you got to make sure that you do your research about the property and the price you're paying.
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that about flooding. That's a very important thing that people need to. And flooding is just one potential risk. Think about if you bought land in California where one of the fires happened. You've got any kind of weather event is worth, or weather risk is worth looking into for sure. And, just like if you look at land prices in a desert somewhere, typically that land's going to be selling for a whole lot cheaper because there's no water anywhere around. And
I was about to say, which is basically what that land turned into over there, even though it's out in the middle of, there are a lot of people on top of land being outrageously priced over there. Uh, Everybody, it has turned into a fight for water. And if you can't get it, you just have a piece of land with no water.
yeah. And I want to say we can only go 2 days without water or we're dead. So if you don't have water on your property, that's a bit of a problem, in my opinion, because we can't survive very long without it. Until some maybe genius someday figures out how to desalinate ocean water. For now, we have to rely on rivers and streams and reservoirs and lakes and dams. So yeah, water's important. But yeah, that's a good point. Definitely need to make sure you do your due diligence and don't just buy any piece of property simply for the sake of buying property. What about has anybody had any experiences with revocable or irrevocable trusts?
Mm-mm. No.
No.
Okay. I haven't set up. I may eventually set one of these up. I haven't done that yet, I'm this sort of thing is not. I wouldn't call this an area of expertise of mine, but my basic understanding of revocable and irrevocable trusts is that revocable means that you can make changes just about whenever you feel like it, and irrevocable, I want to say no changes can be made. I think both go into full effect when you pass, but I think the main difference is just revocable, you can make changes while you're alive, and irrevocable, you've pretty much put something in stone.
Sounds like you give up control.
Yeah, yeah. But you might say, well, what's the point in doing an irrevocable if it removes my control? And I would tell you that I can't think of specifically what the benefits are off the top of my head, but I know that there are benefits that you get from that irrevocable trust that I want to say don't also apply to a revocable.
Yeah, it says here that it provides assets protection.
Yeah, so if you have creditors or somebody trying to sue you or something like that,
They can't touch it.
yeah, I think an irrevocable trust stops them from being able to do anything to it. So, but I feel like most of the time an irrevocable trust is going to be something that most people start when they're older, and when you're young, if you're still pretty young, you're probably going to want to do a revocable first, and then maybe have it to where later it changes into, well, I guess either way, once you pass, I want to say once you die, if you have a revocable trust after your death, it automatically becomes an irrevocable trust. But anyway, that's my very basic definition of those. If you're interested in those things, I would highly recommend talking to a tax professional and an asset protection professional / lawyer. I think most of the time these things are handled by lawyers.
Estate lawyers, as I'm looking.
Yeah, estate lawyers. Cool. Yep. So find one of those guys specializing in these things. A lot. I know that in the past these have been really popular things that people have used to pass down wealth to next generations of their family and stuff like that. Which brings us to estate and death taxes. I'm curious what let's say, what is the current death tax in the United States? want to say you have to be over a certain amount before you start getting taxed. Yeah. So fortunately, as of right now, and man, this is a large amount. It sounds like if somebody were to pass, if they gave you $13,990,000, you wouldn't owe any tax on that. It used to be. It looks like in 2011 it used to be capped at $5 million, but now we're capped at almost 14 million.
Well, I'll tell you what. If they want to give me 15, I'll pay the taxes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm. If I get anything like that, I'm not gonna complain too much.
No. Mm-mm.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's easy to say that, but even if you receive a high amount of money, if you end up, and
It's a lot more money they're taking.
yeah, yeah, you're gonna feel the hit a lot more than you would if it was a small amount of money. And I was hoping that this was gonna show me what the rate is. Let's see. What I'm trying to. Yeah. I don't even know how to word this right. Ryan, help me out.
I'm trying to fill the silence.
No, just
What do you need?
somebody Google for me. What is the? I guess what is the estate tax once you exceed the cap, once you exceed the limit? I'm trying to figure out, like, not that, above 13 million probably ain't gonna apply to that many people,
Yeah.
but I would still like for people to know what the
It says the federal state estate tax exemption in 2025. Is that what you're looking for?
yeah, but I'm
Like
trying to figure out, like,
13.61.
if you exceed that amount, I'm trying to figure out what you're gonna owe, or like what percentage is. But anyway, basically what I was trying to figure out is it 30%, 40%, 50%? But
It says the amount above the exemption tax rate is ranging from 18 to 40.
huh? And
If you're a single person, it's 13.61 million, and then if you're married, it's 27.22 million, and you're taxed on that between 18 to 40%. There's no specific.
yeah, I'm curious.
Portion could be taxed up to 80 or 40%.
Yeah, yeah. I don't I don't know what determines.
How do they determine where you lie?
I don't know. That's a good question. I feel like they're typically going to default to that 40. I have a bad feeling that they're going to try to take as much as possible. But anyway, I guess where I'm getting with that is it's ideal to, I don't know, if you are going to receive a large chunk of money, probably going to be better off to be within that cap and not rise above it. But yeah.
While looking at this, I ran across another category. You may want to talk about this later, or you may not. But annual gift tax. You know about this?
I've heard about it, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head.
In 2025, you can give any number of people up to $19,000 in a single year without incurring a taxable gift. That means you and your spouse could receive a gift of $19,000, up to $38,000 for both of you, without having to pay taxes on that.
Yeah, I think that's a little higher than it used to be. So
It was 18 last year.
okay.
Well,
So,
hey, Kevin, I found an answer for our question.
oh, okay.
It said anything over $1 million is taxed at 40%.
Yeah. I expected that to kind of be the case because if you look at regular income taxes,
That's ridiculous.
yeah, that's the way income taxes work, and why
What if
a
you
lot
give
of
me $900,000 like 3 times this year?
It's 39%.
yeah, the IRS is going to come knock down your door. No, I'm just kidding.
That's right.
No, I'm just playing. Actually, I want to say the IRS at a minimum has been slashed in half since
Look,
Trump took back
if
over.
they raided a former president's house, they can raid yours.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. But I definitely wouldn't advocate intentionally messing them over. But
No.
I will tell you, like I said, that their numbers are not as high as they used to be, and there's definitely a lot of hidden wealth out there that they're always trying to get access to. But the wealthy always find a way to
Get
hire-
around it.
Yeah, hire
Mhm.
lawyers, and that's
Oh, I bet it would shock you the number of people that have deductions that are not legitimate.
oh yeah.
Mm.
Well, I mean, I'm sure a lot of it too is people just don't even honestly report all of the income that they bring in.
Oh, sure.
If it's not on a W-2 or 1099 or something like that, then some people just straight up don't report it.
Oh, trust me, that's why a lot of people, especially in business, offer discounts for cash.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, and that's why, in my opinion, the government's trying to get everybody on either cryptocurrency or credit cards or whatever. In my opinion, they want everything to be traceable.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Of course, yeah.
yeah, cash and precious metals are far less traceable, and therefore, in my opinion, better for the consumer. Whereas credit cards and cryptocurrency are better for the government, in my opinion. So
Then we'll have to go back to those old days where we just trade stuff.
well, I mean, bartering and using precious metals for money, I mean, that's,
About as old as it gets.
yeah, that's the original way to go. And it worked for thousands of years.
57 minutes.
How do you, is there like a voice on the,
It's called megaphone.
oh, okay, megaphone.
Yeah.
Nice. I was going to say it almost sounded like a pre-recording when you did that.
No,
Um,
I'm just that good.
yeah. Whatever you say, buddy. No, no, you are pretty good at the intros and stuff. I like it.
I appreciate it.
I guess for this episode we can kind of conclude with Luke 15:11, the prodigal son. I guess before I read this, well, let me just go ahead and read it and then we'll talk about it.
What do you want to read? I have it here if you want me to read it.
Or yeah, one of y'all are more than welcome to read it if you want to.
Chris, you want to read it? I like your voice, man.
Yeah, Chris is our B group leader, so
And he said there was a man who had 2 sons. All right, Luke 15:11. All right. And he said there was a man who had 2 sons. And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of the property that is coming to me. And he divided his property between them. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all that he had and took a journey into a far country. And there he squandered his property in reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of the country, who sent him into the fields to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough to bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. And he rose and came to his father, but when he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the father said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they begin to celebrate.
Okay, I think we can probably stop right there. I want to say after that it talks about the guy's brother being kind of mad at how well
That's
he was
right.
being treated for coming back. But I guess Chris, in your opinion, what is this sort of telling us about how God feels about prodigal sons? Maybe
There's a
or
lot
lost sheep.
in this parable. Not to be lost. The least not or the least of which is being taught here is that Eastern culture and Western culture are different in that this was in Eastern culture, this was a severe slight on the father. It was a severe insult to the father. He was basically saying in Eastern culture, I want you to give me what you were going to give me if you died. Basically, the way Eastern culture takes it is, I wish you were dead and I want the money that you were going to give me. And that's one of the things that's to be taken from this. And that's one of the things that makes this a hard-hitting story in the Eastern culture. But when we take it from a spiritual standpoint, the son that decided he no longer wanted to be with the father went off and had his time in riotous living, as the Bible says. When he came to himself, he decided he was going to go back and ask if he could be a servant. But the father had compassion on him, forgave him, and made him a son again. And we can take that as comfort of what God will do for us if we repent and return to him, of course.
Yeah, that's kind of what I got from this was, and that's not to say that you should intentionally mess up or do bad things. This is just, to me, this is a reminder that God is merciful, and if we repent and follow him, he's more than happy to bring us back into the fold.
Amen.
So I like this parable because, there are definitely some parts in the Bible that make you feel really convicted and when it comes to the brimstone and fire sort of things. But the good thing about this one is it reminds you that there's hope and there's mercy.
Right.
In Jesus. So that's mainly, and part of the reason I wanted to add this to what we're talking about is because I always thought of a prodigal son as basically just a bit of a black sheep or somebody that lost their way for a little while. And so I feel like part of my life relates to this a little bit because for a period of time, I sort of walked away from Christianity and then came back. So this parable has a little more meaning to me, I guess. Or when I read it, it just has a stronger impact on me, I guess.
Well, it's personal for you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But like I said, the good thing about this one is it gives you hope, and a shot at mercy. So if this applies to any of you out there, just remember this one and take hope in that. But with that being said, for those of you listening, we're gonna do another recording here shortly. So I think we can end this one, and we'll see you back shortly for the next recording.